Oh my God. Oh, yes.
Oh, hello. How's it going?
Good.
Oh. My secret identity. Hello, how's it going?
Good, good. Oh,
I
there
was
you
just
are.
fighting. I was just
Okay.
fighting crime.
There was some strange action hero there for a second. I don't know what's
All
going
right. You're
on.
freezing up.
Uh-oh.
There we go. There we go. I'm back.
You're
I'm back.
good?
You hear me?
Cool.
Oh
Good,
man, I
good.
had to. This actually, for the past few times that we've been recording, I've actually had this hanging off my chair here and been meaning to break it out. So, hello everybody.
Is that an original mask, Michael?
This is the original. This is mine. Look at, you can see. Look at, you can see my face shape. It's molded to my face.
Now,
So,
how did you get it to mold to your face?
well, okay. So give some people a little bit of background on what's going on here. Last podcast
That's
was
a
all
perfect
about
segue,
teaching.
by the way.
Last podcast, the last conversation we did was all about teaching and experiences and fun, moments. And a moment that me and Todd shared was one of our epic Batman scenes that we did that had these very elaborate costumes. And this, from how many years has that been now? This thing is very old. So we
Like
made
20
these
years?
masks. Like 20,
20
yeah.
years.
I mean, at least like 20 years. Probably about 20 years. This mask, it's just a foam that I would make everything with. It's just this foam. And if you heat it up, I would do it with a lighter. I would just heat up really hot. And then I would do the general, shape of the bat signal, right? And then I would heat it up really hot. And I'd say, all right, come here. And then all the dancers would line up and then would just a lot of that. Heat it up some more. A lot of that until you get this like beautiful shaped, thing. So yeah, had to break
That's why
it
I
out.
have all
This is
these
a relic.
wrinkles and scars on my face.
Exactly.
No one was harmed. No one was harmed. It was a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me, Michael, today. This is our third chat. We're angling this towards the Life Moves podcast. We kind of had an ambiguous title for it so far, but we were starting some branding today with the Life Moves podcast and getting it out there, and we're moving forward with it. We had a great meeting, you and I, about the future of the cast. And today we're talking about choreography. And great segue with the Batman mask, because that was one of your pieces of choreography that you worked on with all of us back in the day. And I cannot believe that was 20 years ago. Oh my God.
I mean, it may have been, I don't know exactly how long ago, but yeah, it was.
It's around there because, yeah, it was around 2000.
I know I was under, yeah, because I was, yeah, it's a while. It was a while. But yeah, durable, holds up. But you could ask Jez, you could ask my wife, you could ask a lot of people that I talk dance to. Whenever I talk dance with people locally here, your name gets brought up almost every time, and your name gets shot a lot of praises because of your ability to speak to people with your choreography. The way your pieces are, it's a lot different than the way I compose my pieces. So I'm really excited to not only have this conversation, but have it with you specifically, because as I mentioned on another talk that we had a few years back, I was doing some promo videos for BreakOut Studios, and I got to be a little fly on the wall and videotape all these, or record. Listen, I'm 42 years old, and videotape. I had a big old Canon videotaping with this crank, these classes, and I got to really experience what classes were like, because I didn't grow up taking classes. And your approach, the way that you choreograph is just, it's so different than the way I do it. I look at it and I think of it, it looks more like sculpting, like you're sculpting versus what I do. What is your process? Is it, do you find that it's different every time, or there are certain aspects that kind of stay the same? Like, where does it all begin with you?
I think what immediately popped in my head was music, but then I have to pull back from that because I've been inspired to create from imagery and art and life and nature and all kinds of things. So I think it starts with something that sparks you, that turns you on, that ignites an emotion inside of you. And then you want to translate that emotion somehow into an experience for an audience that transports them the way you have just been inspired. So it could be anything really. But I'm really, really inspired by music. I think probably 65 to 70% of all the work I've done is I hear a really great piece of music and, you know, it takes me somewhere. The paid kind of gigs I've done throughout my life, sometimes you're handed a piece of music and you're like, I gotta really go deep inside myself right now to figure out what I'm gonna do with this, because it's not something I would pick, but it's the clients, and I have
great areas to cover too.
Yeah, sometimes you're forced to work with what you have, and that's fine because it's paying your bills and great. But the things that have been kind of voluntary for me, or things that I was able to do myself, and so thankful that I could do that, have been really a mix between music and also life. So that's very broad. And then from there, you jump in the studio and you start improvising and moving around. And I've learned to shut the music off, you know, after a while. I think sometimes I get overwhelmed by a piece of music and then it kind of takes me over. And I'm so obsessed with it that I just really have to get it out of my head and just start moving and just trust that my body's heard the music, and then I can kind of go from there and move around. But I've been inspired by so many different things. So how about you, Michael? What gets you ignited for a piece?
Yeah, you know, now it's a little different because it's there's a lot of space in between. You know, when I do choreograph, I'm not in a position where I have to hammer out combos weekly, like, you know, like actual working dancers and working teachers. So I do have that luxury of kind of sitting in between and letting inspiration just kind of hit me. Sometimes that's a dangerous place too, because you don't want to be lazy and wait around for something to hit you. You know, you don't want to wait for inspiration to hit you. You want to go digging a little. And sometimes for me personally, I'm at a point where I feel like I grow the most as a choreographer when I step away from dance for a while.
Mm-hmm.
When I step away from dance for a while and I come back into it, I think physically it's always tough because, you know, old joints and stuff like that. But as far as feeling like a fish out of water, it's like, no, it feels natural. It feels even more natural. Actually, I feel more comfortable every time I get back into it. And I think that, you know, giving myself time to live life outside of dance, outside of music, because I really connected to what you said about hearing music and it just kind of clicking, but at the same time, the absence of music, sometimes finding moments in the absence of music that moves you. But I feel like as choreographers, we just are trained to hear and to recognize the music and the rhythm within and everything, really.
Right.
And so that's why people could leave a movie feeling moved, and it could be nothing to do with dance. It could have no movement. It just could just be that emotional roller coaster. But film, story structure, I mean, that word, story structure, there is a structure to a story. There's a three act, there's a composition, you have your inciting incident, you have this, you have all these kind of things. It's a dance. You are watching a dance. When you're watching film, you're watching a dance. And that's coming from somebody who's a dancer. If you were talking to somebody who was a musician, that person would be able to point it out through that point of view, and so on and so forth. We're talking as dancers, so I'm going to get all dancery on you. So for me, you know, I really connected to both of those things, but I think it's kind of one and the same. I think it's, you know, you recognizing the rhythm and the music that's speaking to you through moments, through people, through whatever patterns. You know, I remember when I was I'd get lost in thought when I was at the movie theater, because there was this little ice cream thing that at the one of the theaters they served ice cream, and I'd look at the scoop patterns, and I would think, what dance moves would create those patterns right there, and I'd get lost. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I start recognizing music and dance in everything. So with that, I feel lucky because I feel like I'm constantly inspired, and I feel like I'm constantly choreographing, even when I'm not. So then when I do and step in and start to move, but then, yeah, you know, but what's going to incite that act of me actually physically creating movement is going to be a song. It's going to be something that strikes me going, hey, use me over here. And you're like, okay, start playing that. And you're just like, whoa. And you just kind of, your initial reaction, you know, you're feeling the way you're grooving to that. And I know I mentioned this before. For those of you just joining, we're talking all about choreography. I mentioned in one of our conversations before that I feel like your true connection to whatever song or moment that you're dancing to is within the first few seconds of experiencing it. So when you hear a song and it just kind of everything, you know, just lights up, you get you're goosebumping hard, and you're just like, oh man, this old man feeling right there, that's what you should be chasing. You're like, this is what I need to bottle up. The choreography is the vessel to do so. Now, what shape does this feeling need, you know, in order to kind of communicate what I feel this looks like? My God, that's wordy, but I hope you're following along here.
Oh yeah. No,
But so to me, you know, it's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, that music is always the thing that's going to ignite the act of me choreographing. But I think that sometimes me stepping away from dance and experiencing life and letting myself grow and letting everything that I've learned as a dancer and through all this movement go into play and take an effect in my everyday life. And then, because then I get to see clearly the dance in everything around me and not just wait for the moments that, you know, I feel like I have it there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like for me, life and my body and the environment lets me know when I haven't taken my choreography vitamins, and says you need to create something. Because I know for me it's a fuel. It's something that makes me a better person, because I'm an artist to my core, and I think artists have to create. And whatever the medium you are using, you just have to be producing content and creating, and you know, whatever your process is. I felt that lately. Last night I was on the computer late into the night just listening to music and watching videos, and you know, starting to put myself back in a place like, you know what, I keep reteaching this choreography on YouTube. No, I need to create something new. My body is yearning to do that. And I know for me, when I moved to LA, I soon realized that my future wasn't in performance dance. I was such a stressful performer. I would get so worked up, and it could be the smallest performance, but I was so like, I had a lot of anxiety around being the one that was on stage. Now I still get a little bit of that being a director, choreographer, and creative, but it's a different energy, and it's way more rewarding. And the wave of good vibes I get as a creator outweighs the anxiety. Not so much when I'm actually the one on camera or on stage doing the performance, but when I'm directing something and being able to see it and work with dancers or whomever, I feel so much better. So for a long time, that was like a dichotomy, because you train your butt off to dance, you know, and I went to LA being a pretty technical dancer, and there's not a lot of really technical guys out there. I mean, there's probably a million now, but when I went out there,
Yeah.
it was sort of a dime a dozen. And so I could have easily gone that route and gotten those jobs, but I just wanted to create, and I knew that immediately. And whether it was in like the fashion show stuff, or in just choreography, or just creating stuff for studio work, I knew that for me was everything. I was on a Princess cruise ship for 7 months in the Caribbean dancing, and they just asked the dancers, like, who would want to choreograph this Christmas show? There's no extra money, there's no whatever, but we need a Christmas show. And I was, immediately, because I had been dancing so long, and that, like, for me was like sucking out my soul a little bit. And then
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I'll create something, I'll do it. And it was like the smallest little show, and it was whatever, but I got to get back into my element. So I know for me,
Yeah.
and I knew this like last night, again, like when I was going through all my inspiration, I was like, okay, it's time. Here's some music. Start storyboarding, start your files. I love technology too, so I have all my little files on my desktop, and I can drag and do all that. So it's total,
You're a
like,
sculptor.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to have that outlet overall,
Yeah, especially if I know that we have a lot of people. We have a few people right now that have been listening in here. I'm sure a lot of them are movers. I'm assuming so. A lot of them may be choreographers as well. If you have any comments or any questions that you want to gear towards us, feel free. But to speak, to show you how to shoot more praise towards your choreography, I'll give you a little quick demonstration. So people that are familiar with Todd Wilson's choreography out there, name not just two, one. You have to name your one favorite piece that he's choreographed that you've learned. What's your one favorite piece above and beyond everything else? Now listen, I know this for a fact. These people right now that are going through this Rolodex and choosing it, it's like asking somebody what their favorite song or what their favorite movie is, because they're like, oh, that's tough, because you have a catalog. You have a catalog of pieces, not just of work, but pieces that have like profoundly moved people, and that's rare. How old were you when you started choreographing? Favorite Todd Wilson piece? Let's hear it. See it.
3 years old. My sister and I were epic performers in the living room. So shout out to Jody Wilson, because we were constantly we would hear my parents having friends over, later on the weekends, and we'd get up and like put on our little outfits and run out and have songs ready. And so choreographing, in that way, very young. We had epic routines. Oh, Elsie, thank you. See, I have to read all these.
I know. Like, look how these are people that were watching. Look how long it took for them to start naming something. Bitter. Elsie said bitter. Jez, probably my speechless solo when I was 17. She had to preface it with a probably, because again, there has to be that safety net, because choosing one of your favorite pieces, like, you don't want to commit to it. Connie Wilson, Sasha's song. Yeah, there you go. So there you go, man. You got gems, man. You got a catalog.
Oh, thank you. And so you do as well. So if people want to bring up Michael's pieces, you could do that too. I would say my favorite Michael piece would probably be, just because I feel like it was the one we spent the most time on, would be the devil dance, the devil one that we did. I don't know if you remember that. Oh,
I do.
Maybe, no, I don't. I don't know if it was Batman. I think
the devil dance was a big epic. So the devil dance was kind of a take on the devil. The devil went down to Georgia. You know that old song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. And it was essentially, it's this old country song about this fiddler who's like the best fiddler in all the land, who has to battle the devil for his soul and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like this fiddle battle against the devil, and it's this back and forth. So it was a play on that, but it was very big, very operatic, and very catwalky, which is my term. And it was about it opened up with this party scene and whatnot, and then this shooting happens because of something that went down, and then it turns very theatrical. This kid, he goes up and it has voiceover like freaking Phantasmic, and he essentially has to battle the devil for his soul. But it starts off 2-on-2, but then angels and demons start to get involved, and it becomes really big, and then it has that big operatic song, dun 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 dun, boom 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 boom. So yeah, that was a doozy. That was a doozy. See, with me, I feel like my journey within all that stuff, because see, I look at that and I go, yeah, that was a huge turning point for me, but not necessarily the choreography. I don't know if I could remember a lot of that, any of that choreography, but as far as the stage stuff, as far as the music mixing, I could pinpoint exactly where I was, and it wasn't about the movement. It was more so about the spectacle. And so I have points where like, okay, this was a game changer for me, because this is when I started to discover how to do this stuff. This is when I started to open up my choreography in this way. This is when I started to open up my music mixes and musical vocabulary in this way. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. So for me, it's not necessarily certain pieces as far as movement, but I think for me, it's always been like the whole thing. Do you remember what moments those were for you? Like where you remember as a choreographer where you kind of switched gears? I think everybody who dances, who choreographs, has that kind of moment for creatives where it's like you reach that one point where it's like, ah.
I think it goes back to our talk about being a teacher. I think along the way, there have been like ego check moments for me where I realized like, okay, this moment requires work, period. This moment requires research and time and knowing my stuff. I was cussed. Can I cuss? I don't even know. But it requires.
How is it? I have a 4-year-old here. That's
oh. I've got to put time in it to make it, the moment requires you to invest yourself in a way that the end product is going to be bigger and better each time you do it. So I guess there's been points along the way. I mean, when we were doing all that work together when I was in high school and even younger, I mean, what an amazing, I mean, in Tucson, Arizona, I'm a part of this group where we're creating costumes. I mean, this is all led by you. Music, choreography, staging, everything that I would eventually use in my life as a moneymaker, as a professional. I got to start forming the person I would become later. So massive props to you, my friend, that you gave that to us. I know there's a few people watching right now that have the exact same experience and can relate to what I'm saying, but it's crazy that we experienced that together, and it was just fun, and we had a good time, and there was no stress of like, well, crap, I've got to pay my studio apartment rent in LA, which is ridiculous, and I have 8 jobs,
Yeah.
So
well, even if we talked about how when we were kids, we would make all these rounds, performing at all these high schools, all these different events here and there. We were performing everywhere. But if we had social media at that point in time, I don't know if we would have made the rounds quite like that. I think we probably would have ended up starting to create pieces specifically for that,
Right.
Our stuff was so theatrical as it was. It got to the point where the thing that was really holding it back was, hey, man, this is on a stage and this is live, and it can't, what are you doing? So I think that we would have went nuts with this kind of stuff, but then opens up the door to all these other things, rights to music, all these things that people face now with online streaming stuff.
And what ended up taking us away from the creative process too. Jez and I have this conversation all the time where class has become a video production versus class. And some people are in a rush to get their work on YouTube or, out there, that it's less about the creative process and creating art and more about showcasing views, likes, ego. And again, I don't want to I don't want to belittle that. I think there's been some great things to come from social media and from Instagram, or using it right now. But I think also there has to be a balance between creating selflessly, pushing our industry forward in a healthy way where it's not just about celebrity, and also using technology. That's kind of what we've been doing with BreakOut the last few weeks, is we've been talking about, okay, how can we use technology to further this, to create more, to bring a voice to people. I mean, you and I are going to be finishing up this 3-part series, and then we're looking outwards towards more creatives. It's not going to be just us. It's going to be choreographers and all kinds of people. We want it to be not just about us,
Right.
So yeah, social media is great, but when it just becomes about putting yourself out there and nothing more, it's easily forgettable.
Very true. And yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on with that. Social media is going to be, it's one of those things, you still, you got to be disciplined, more disciplined now with social media, disciplined to find your own voice, your own originality, your own connection to music, and not your connection to a look or to a style. That's a presentation. A lot of these videos, class videos, I mean, they just look the same. Their backdrops start looking the same. There's just a uniformed look, and to a certain generation, that's probably just the look of dance. That's probably what dance looks like. When I think of dance, and when I think of things, moments that inspire me, none of which consist of, internet videos, but I'm not of the internet video era. There's a lot of people that I know that could look back at people, Daniel Cloud Campos, that guy now has been a dance filmmaker for, 15 maybe, 10 years, for the last 10 years, at least, about 10 years, I guess. That's when I first got wind of him, about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. No, 12, 13 years ago, man. But see, that's just what I'm saying. You now have a generation of dancers that have these now choreographers that have adapted and have done incredible things with this medium, and that's been their starting point of reference. You go back a little before then it's, you're going to get like the Wade Robinson, Darren Henson era. You dig back a little bit further than that, you get Tina Landon, you get, it just kind of starts to that whole deal. But now it's moving further and further away, because you don't get as many music videos that are as dance heavy as we did at one point in time.
Right.
People's main point for all this stuff is this kind of thing. And which isn't bad, but I think it was easier for us at one point in time to find the discipline, to find our own identity, because we kind of didn't have a choice. We had to fill in the gaps. We got our sources from performances, live performances, award shows, music videos, same thing everybody else was. Then after that, it was inspiration off of our own environment, our communities, the people dancing around us. And that's what and then it trickles down to you. All this plus you equals what? And then that's your voice. And it was a little easier to find it because we had to fill in a lot of gaps ourselves. Now, you don't have to fill in as many gaps. I mean, you look now at dance. I know we talked a little bit about this in the last conversation we had. Choreography is just it's astounding. Now it's just like, you're like, whoa, like robots. It's like watching synchronized swimmers, but the groove, everything kind of has this generalness to it now, whether they're from Asia, whether they're from America, whether they're from the Philippines. It's all starting to just become a look. It's choreography. And that just seems a little boring to me, Yeah, I don't know. Not to say that there, I mean, I see some incredible stuff. I'm talking very specifically about a very specific style, very look that you see, you know, not, there's people that are doing incredible things out there.
Right. My friends last night in a group chat were all talking about getting together to watch the premiere of World of Dance. And I felt bad because in the chat I was like, you know what? I'm not a huge fan of the show. And I don't really have a ton of time to get into like why. But it's very entertaining. And I mean, I'm sure I'll participate, but that's my feelings about it. And it's not that it's not impressive. And it's so synchronized, and the acrobatics are incredible, and the physicality of it is. But for me, again, I'm a storyteller, and I'm attracted to storytelling. And because it's so hard in a 2-minute little snippet to get a full engaged story, that it just doesn't speak to me. And it's the same thing with So You Think. And really all the shows, it's such a flashbang moment that it's fun to watch and it's impressive, but it's not something that I'm going to come back to like such a silly comparison, but like Westworld or some show that's being created where people are sitting down, they're storyboarding and they're writing, and there's costume and there's music and there's, I mean, it's not dance, but it's based in story. That is what like
I would argue that you're being, like I was talking before, you're being drawn to the whole dance of, there's this narrative, there's a story arc within that episode, but it's also setting up another episode that's setting up an entire season that has these ups and downs that are very carefully crafted, using words, using performance, using music, using sound, using angles and composition. It's dance. It's dance there. But I understand, because I don't watch the dance shows either, because it's people dancing. You know what I mean? When I'm watching, I get what you mean. I get what you're saying. When I'm watching another show, you know, like a Westworld or like a series, I feel like I'm engaged in the rhythm of the dance of what's being communicated there. When I'm watching dance shows, I'm watching people dance, you know, which is fun.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's a
competition and stuff like that. I do watch Dancing with the Stars, though. I don't know what that is. I love me and Christina.
But you know what though? Do you think that Dancing with the Stars is more story? Because sometimes they have story with their productions, and you know, there's a little bit more creativity, I think, on Dancing with the Stars.
Well, here's the thing with that show. The thing with that show, I had a roommate in LA that was a producer on that show, and that show, I mean, for dancers, they're essentially directors. The partners, the professionals on that show, they have to create all the lighting. They have to create, you know, all the setting, all the whole stage direction. They're in charge of all that, the costumes, everything, the music, the teaching. They are directing essentially performances every single week. And he was saying that people will get their performances the day of the shooting, within hours, within just a couple of hours of the shooting, and they would be like, "Where's my wardrobe?" And the wardrobe people will point to a roll of fabric, glittery fabric, and go, "It's right there." They haven't made it yet. The day of, they have a blocking rehearsal, and then they get everything together, the measurements, all that stuff. They have a full seamstress team and all that stuff. They build the costumes. They have a live orchestra there that have to go over any compositions with the choreographer. And I mean, and you look at the choreography, when they're good, it is very good. And when I think what I enjoy out of it is you have somebody who's like 5'2", who's partnered with somebody like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is a 70-some-year-old 7'3" man.
Right.
I mean, talk about how as a choreographer, what do you do?
Right.
It was some of the most creative sequences and pieces I've ever seen. None of it was cliche. None of it was this. It was just brilliant. And to me, it's like, that's choreography. It's like, It's a challenge at times. It's not just,
Right.
it's for me, it's not just about this is what I feel and this is what I want to show. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to put that, you know, I don't know what this is going to be. Throw a challenge out at me and let me dig and find something awesome in it. And, you know, sometimes you feel like, you know, you're being tossed a turd and say, here, polish this turd. You know, it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? But what do? You know, if somebody hands you something, you have the opportunity to do something. I mean, think about it this way. As a dancer, I'm talking to everybody out there who are dancers. I'm asking you a question. In your whole dance lives, in your whole dance careers, think about all the times performances have come about. You've gone to stages, you've gone here and there, and all of a sudden, the stage has carpet, and we have a tap piece, or we have this many people, and we are told the stage is going to be this big, but it's only this big. What's going to happen with it? You name it. There's those moments. I'm sure you could think of millions of moments like that, right? So
Yeah.
the follow-up is, how many times have you gone? How many times has it ever gone this way? Well, I guess we can't do it. I guess see you guys next performance. You guys turn around, walk away, and go home. How many times does that happen? That doesn't happen. Like, yo, you do it. All of a sudden, it's never a question of, well, now we can't do this. Suddenly you pop into another gear. You're like, ah, hell. You're looking around. Okay, well, those tables hold us because we could tap on those tables and this and this. Okay, so-and-so, okay, we got to get this choreography straightened away now. Like, there is a programming within us. There's a work ethic and a programming with us and a determination that's incredible, that I love. I love about dance. I love about dancers. I love about choreographers. And to me, that's like the sweet spot. That's when you're in the pocket. That's when you're creating. That's when you don't have time to question yourself. You don't have time to question what things look like. Now it's just all that life experience, all those moments you've taken to dissect and to create these beautiful things. Now all that gets to come into place secondhand, and you just get to ride a wave as a dancer and create with people you have a good time doing so with, you know. And sometimes the kookier the challenge, the better the result's going to be.
Yeah.
But as a choreographer, when those challenges do come and somebody hands you a horrible song, a horrible concept, a horrible this, to me, I say challenge yourself in this way. Look at it as the dancer that you are, and see it for what it is. It's a stage with carpet on it. It's a stage this big when it was supposed to be this big. What do? You do what you do. You work your way around it. You adapt. You know, it's that's, to me, that's choreography. It's such a wide array of things.
And those creative spaces and venues and opportunities are out there, and some people pass things up because they're waiting for Britney Spears to call them to create their show. And well, guess what? That might not happen. It might. Good for you. But there are always places to create. There are always, you know, youth centers out there and community centers out there, and local facilities that are looking for showcasing your work. So don't sit at home waiting for the best and the brightest and all these things that you think that you deserve. No, create. Constantly be creating. Look what we have. We've got social media, and we have live videos and whatnot. Well, we are approaching the time where we're going to have to jump off here because we have an open tap class coming up at 11 a.m. with Jez. But I want to just open up the floor to some questions. So if you, there's Jez. Hey. She's actually in this room with me right now, but she's getting ready, and I won't put her on the spot. That'd be mean of me. But if anyone wants to ask any questions, or we could start, you know, any topics we want to go over, feel free to jump in and just shout out something to us. We have about 10 minutes left.
Do we have any dancers, teachers, choreographers out there? If so, where do you guys teach? Where do you guys dance? What's your story? Who are we talking to? Who are you? Who are you listening to us? Who are you? While they think of things.
Mm-hmm.
Any topic you want us to go over, anything you want us to touch on, feel free. Now's the chance. go for it. But until then, one thing I wanted to ask you quickly, I know we are limited on time. Could you think of any dance sequences, any dance pieces, be it in film, be it in stage, video, performance, that really spoke to you and that you can kind of go back to now and always draw inspiration from?
Um, well, I think after a late night conversation I had with I think it was Jez and Emma, we were talking about videos and archiving and history, and that night I just went on the YouTubes and just went through, like, I watched Scream, Michael Jackson and Janet. I watched Smooth Criminal. I watched
There was two
Janet
choreographers
Jackson.
in Scream, I believe.
Yeah, it was Tina Landon.
Sorry, I'm going over the choreography Rolodex. That's how when you start naming these things, I'm like, who's the choreographer? Who's the choreographer?
Yeah, I think
so
Tina did that.
You said Scream. You said Scream, but I think they each had to have their own choreographer. And that was like the big thing in that thing was like they had Tina Landon working with Janet Jackson, and then I forgot who it was that was working with Michael Jackson.
But the dance break was Tina's choreography. That one section, because I remember watching, because I watched like the making of video too, and it was interesting to see her rehearsing with Michael, because she was such a Janet person, you know, exclusively at that time. I mean, this is right after, like, you know, all of those iconic performances, Velvet Rope, I think that was around the same time. Then so another performance I watched was another Tina, probably, I'm assuming, because it was all her choreography. It was the Janet Icon performance. Shout out to Lucette Bustamante, who came down from the ceiling in an orb. That was amazing. And then just like some old school, like Gene Kelly stuff, and you know, I'm inspired by everything. I can see someone pushing groceries down the street, and they might have a cool cadence to their walk, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. I think I could create something from that. I don't know. It's so random. I think Jez had a question here. How do you think competitions affect choreography? I'm thinking how all dance representation in media is usually competitive. I know I was shaped somewhat from growing up one foot in the competition world, because you see so much. And actually there were some really creative choreographers out there. A lot of it was just like the same old stuff, but every once in a while something would break through the noise. Kind of what happened with Sasha's song is we brought this piece that was minimal tricks, hardcore storytelling, original music by Michael, and the first time we performed it was at Encore in Phoenix, and I had to go back to Tucson because it was my senior prom. So they let me go home while the performance happened, and I came back the next day. And it was cool to see that piece do so well, and it was so not like everything else. There was no fouette sequence. There was no backflips, crotch slams, whatever the heck. It was simple, and it was different, and it was fun to see how well they did with it. It got like a perfect score, and it was just cool to see that recognition. And at that time, I think it was possible. I think nowadays the competition world, from what I get, is really cookie cut. But I mean, I sent this soloist a couple years back to nationals, and I worked really hard on the solo. It was different, and it was storytelling, is beautiful. And then they sent me back all the comments and critiques, and it was like, more technique, more trick, more turns. I'm like, you know, beyond competition world, it will be so rare when you get to a job and they're like, all right, I want you to perform this acrobatic routine. No, you got to sell this toothpaste, and you better be damn creative about it. So the competition world is, I think, 50-50.
I think, and with the competition stuff, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about as dancers, when you're handed something and opportunities, you know, what are you going to do with it? And the competition thing seems like a really good example of that, because you have I can't speak in general. I don't want to speak generally. When I think competitions, on one spectrum, you think these uniforms that came out of catalogs and these routines that are so cookie cutter, that are geared specifically towards getting points to get trophies, and ponytails that are just so tight up here, and all these little leotards and young little straps that are like and all that. But and so caught up, stage parents and all this, all the ugly side of competitions that you could picture. I could think of that stuff too. But on the other end over here, I do know that a lot of these competitions, a lot of these things also are accompanied by a lot of workshops with a lot of dancers that you're not going to be able to take from. And you have opportunities to develop relationships, not just with them, but with other people that dance in your area, and give yourself the opportunity to see the plastic infrastructure of a lot of these worlds, because you're a dancer and you're a choreographer. It's up to you to work your way around that. Look at that. Don't look at it for what it is and what it has to be. Look at it as what it is and what you can do with it. How do you take the infrastructure of all this stuff and do something creative with it? Because if you don't do that, then you're just going to be a product of just competition, Star Search, this American Idol, just manufactured competitions, feeding these manufactured things, manufactured dances. But at the same time, the heart and soul, the root of things like tap and b-boying is the battle. I mean, it's the very core of it. And there's so much love and so much to learn within the dynamics of battling and the dynamics of that, the camaraderie, there's just that's a whole other Oprah,
Yeah.
So competition, it could be what, it really depends on who you're with, the mindset, and what you're gaining from it, because there's a lot of hollow there, but I could also imagine that there are some gems there that you can use to create choreography. Does that make sense, or am I talking out of my butt?
No, that makes total sense. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes over the next few years. And I just feel like with the amount of content and accessibility to music and references, it's like, come on, let's step it up. Let's cry a little. Let's laugh a little. Let's experience life through movement. We had another question. How does tapping into the creative side look as you get older and have a family, adult responsibilities that take up so much time and energy? Coming from Rad Strength, and I believe that's a Melanie. You got to pull from what's around you. I think when I've seen Mel post the videos of her and her little sweet kiddos dancing around, there you go. That's some interpretive dance choreography at its finest. That's the most raw, real moments you're going to get. That's a tough one, because time is something that when you're creating a piece of art, you do need to make time for yourself to do that and find some silence to send to your mind's eye. But at the same time, we create within the environment that we're in. And knowing the person that's asked this question, Mel, and how incredibly strong and creative she is, that I believe she could do anything. She posts some things about costumes that they work on and little creative projects. That's all choreography. That's all art. So, Mel, you're doing it right now. So, I don't know, Michael. I don't know if you can add to that.
Well, this hits close to home with me.
Yeah.
We have one kid, 4-year-old little boy, running around the house, and when you grow up, you already could feel a difference in what you're able to commit to dance as a young person to becoming an adult with responsibilities, family, career, all that stuff, because suddenly your time and everything needs to kind of split. Now, when kids come into the picture, it's a whole other thing. It's just a whole other thing. And again, I'm going to try not to speak generally about it, because it's, you know, everybody's experiences with everything is their own experiences and whatnot. But with me is, I found the irony. This is the trick life plays on us as parents. This is the trick life plays on parents. This is what I'm learning. And I say this as somebody who is the father of one kid. I'm probably speaking to people who have several, which is having two versus one is a game changer. So I recognize that. But this is the little game that life plays with us. The moment they give us kids, there's something about that process that makes us realize how far our heads were up our own butts a little bit, you know. There's something about that for me, it was suddenly like, I became, you know, the stuff that certain things that I thought were so important that I always would feel would be so important suddenly became very unimportant. Um, you know, I used to pride myself. I mean, I'm a dancer. That's who I am. That's like, I live and breathe. The dance is in my blood. Dance is this. I'm a dancer. This. I'm a mover. I'm a blah 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 blah. Suddenly, it's not that. It's just not as important anymore. You know, it's just like, you know, I. But the thing is, you find such clarity in I am this person's father. I am this person's mother. I am this person's guardian. This person is now this and this. And suddenly, there's like there isn't a single identity, title, or label that I'm ever going to get that's going to be stronger than that one. Isn't. So why am I freaking out and stressing out over dance this much? Why am I so worried about what people think of my choreography? Why do I feel this and this? Who cares? I'm Ezra's dad. That's all I am. They're never going to not make me be that. And I dance, you know? And with that, suddenly, the trick is all your time is occupied by this little one. But through that, you find so much more, a different type of drive and a different type of inspiration that requires movement, especially if you're a mover, especially if you're a dance. There's all these feelings, there's all these things you have to process that never changes, sets of obstacles that are constantly evolving, growing, and changing. And as dancers, as choreographers, this is not only what we do, this is how we process things, you know. And with that, when you're able to, it's that was a game changer for me, because then suddenly it's like, I gotta move, I want to move, you know. And you know, I don't know what that looks like, I don't know. But now all this stuff that cluttered my mind about it's got to be this, it's got to be that, you got to be this, you got to be that, blah blah blah. It's like, man, it may not even require me. Maybe I just need to get out of the way and just kind of bring some people together. Maybe this and this. It kind of shows how unimportant I am. I'm important in a couple of areas, and that's being Christina's husband and Ezra's father. You know, those are the two things I need to guard with my life and all that stuff. Who I am as a choreographer, who I am publicly, all this kind of stuff, who we are as dancers, that takes a back seat, but we're still movers, and we're still moved and inspired by the hard work, the effort, and the love that we put into our careers, into our families, into our children's significant others, our family, you know, all that stuff. And dance is what music looks like, and we want to show people what we are seeing and experiencing. So the cruel trick is, you're probably more inspired than ever, and you probably have the less amount of time than you ever had. But the funny thing is, you're probably more productive than you've ever been in a weird way, because you just have to fit it in while you can, right? And you just have to make the most of it. And with that, you're surprised how much you can get done and how much you can accomplish, because you realize how much space all of that jumbleness occupied, and you didn't need it. You didn't need it. You just needed a moment with dance. You need a moment with music. You needed a moment to connect. And now you get back to your kids. You know what I mean?
That's
To me,
an
that's
amazing, amazing moment to end on. Unfortunately, we have to jump out of here because we have a class starting at 11. But thank you so much, Michael, for that. That was an amazing way to close our conversation about choreography, keeping life in balance and keeping it in perspective. So we will be announcing a lot of good info soon. We're building a podcast here. We don't have any exact details to share with you right now, but it will be put throughout all of our social media here soon. Again, you can find all kinds of great information at breakoutstudiostucson.com. And Michael, thank you again for jumping in on this, and I'm excited for the future.
Thank you. Same
Bye,
here.
everyone.
Talk to you guys soon.
All right, take care,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.